Have you ever seen an aquarium full of fish and corals and been completely mesmerized by the sight? Well, did you know that most of the fish in that tank were most likely taken straight off a wild coral reef? Neither did I until recently. I've always been fascinated by fish and all things underwater. I even used to have 3 freshwater tanks. Here are some pictures from the tanks that I used to have. While freshwater tanks are relatively cheap, saltwater tanks, on the other hand, are very expensive. The whole saltwater industry is a very lucrative business. It makes about $200 to $300 million. Until recently, I was completely unaware of the ugly truth behind the saltwater fish industry. The saltwater fish collecting industry is a massive business that is quickly destroying reefs. It kills off innumerable amounts of fish, corals, and entire ecosystems. We must work to put a stop to this devastating trade before it destroys the world's most beautiful reefs. In order to stop the trade, though, we need to understand why it's so bad in the first place. About 98% of the saltwater aquarium fish species are wild caught. There are a couple different ways to capture these incredible fish. The first is using sodium cyanide. Here's a picture of a diver who's spraying the sodium cyanide onto the rocks. This method involves spraying highly toxic sodium cyanide onto fish in order to stun them, but it has many deadly side effects. The first of which being it can kill the fish the fishermen are targeting if used in abundance. Sodium cyanide causes severe gasping followed by a lack of balance and complete loss of respiratory activity. So as you can imagine, it tends to kill off the fish. Also, it can destroy the ecosystem in which the fish were caught. Each live fish caught using cyanide destroys about a square yard of the coral. According to marine biologist Sam Mumyoung of the International Marine Life Alliance. Catching the fish, unfortunately, is just the beginning of the deadly process. The next concern is transporting the fish. The name of the game for those in the trade is to sell the fish as quickly as possible, because then you're passing the risk on to the next buyer, says Renee Umberger, the director of For the Fishes. The fish must be transported from the captor across to America, then to the wholesaler, who distributes the fish to the retailers, who can finally sell the fish to the customers. This process is extremely stressful for the fish, and many saltwater fish are very finicky and require very specific conditions, so the combination of the stress and poor condition that the fish are kept in tends to kill a very large number of the fish, oftentimes in the aquarium of an unsuspecting customer. Once the coral is destroyed, the whole ecosystem collapses. The second method of capture is using nets. While it may be viewed as mostly harmless, it is simply a lesser of two evils. This method involves surrounding a rock with a large net and then prodding the fish out of the rock in order to get them to swim into the net, and then the fishermen capture them in the net and take them away. While this method is less harmful, it still takes many fish out of the ecosystem, which of course is devastating to the reef. However, there is good news. There are many things being done in order to protect the reefs. Governments in the Philippines, Sri Lanka, and in Indonesia are cracking down on regulations, especially in regards to sodium cyanide. Petitions are being made for the U.S. government to test fish for sodium cyanide in order to prevent the sale of illegal fish into the U.S. Most importantly, some aquarium owners are choosing to only buy responsibly sourced fish, even if it means a larger price tag. Finally, research is being done in order to captive breed and raise saltwater fish. Some fish, such as clownfish, cardinalfish, and yellow tangs, have already been successfully captive bred. Here's a picture of 3 yellow tangs which have been captive bred and they're working on raising. There are other saltwater fish that are still being studied in order to captive breed them. If the hobby gets to a point where all the fish are able to be captive bred, it would greatly improve the health of the reefs that are currently used to harvest the fish. Currently, wild-caught fish are much cheaper than captive-bred fish because it's very difficult to breed saltwater fish, so there's a limited supply. If more aquarists push for sustainably sourced captive-bred fish, perhaps it can create more of a market for them, and breeders will focus on more research for captive breeding, and we can finally put an end to this ugly business. At the end of the day, the choice is up to the consumer, whether or not they will support this devastating industry that exploits reefs. Next time you walk by a fish tank, I hope you consider what went into getting those fish there. Thank you.